We have a huge NHL trade to discuss today. The Pittsburgh Penguins and the Florida Panthers have hooked up on a 4-player multiple draft pick trade. We'll get into all the details coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams, so if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So as I mentioned off the top, we have another big trade to discuss here today. As we've been talking about recently, we've seen a couple of trades get started, especially with the Leafs acquiring Jake Muzzin, and I kind of speculated that the floodgates may begin to open. We may see a lot more activity than normal before heading into the NHL trade deadline here coming up February the 25th. So we're now 24 days from the deadline. But today we have a big deal going down between the Penguins and the Florida Panthers. So going to the Florida Panthers is Derek Brassard, Riley Sheahan, and 3 draft picks. Now all 3 draft picks are in the 2019 NHL draft. Of course, you get the 2019 second round pick that belonged to the Pittsburgh Penguins, the 2019 fourth round pick which belonged to the Pittsburgh Penguins, and the other 2019 fourth round pick that was originally belonged to the Minnesota Wild, which was the pick that they just recently acquired when they traded Jamie Alexiak back to the Dallas Stars. So they get Brassard, Sheahan, and 3 draft picks going over to the Florida Panthers. In return, the Pittsburgh Penguins receive center Jared McCann and center Nick Bjugstad. Of course, Bjugstad and McCann are both younger contracts. They're both signed here for beyond this year as well. They can both play center ice. They can both play the wing if necessary as well. But considering Brassard and Sheahan were both traded, I would fully suspect the Penguins intend to use them as center icemen, likely in the number 3 and 4 spots, or potentially a little bit on the wing as well. Of course, Nick Bjugstad is a pretty big guy as well, so he can certainly be an effective winger. He's played a lot of wing with the Panthers lately because they've been pretty deep at center ice for a majority of his stay there as well. I do think this trade is good for both clubs for a variety of reasons. For the Pittsburgh Penguins, obviously it gets rid of a couple pending UFAs off their books. Derek Brassard didn't really work out all that well since they acquired him last year from the Ottawa Senators at the NHL deadline last year. Riley Sheahan was kind of a hit or miss as well, whether or not that worked out. So, of course, they're both pending UFAs. They get them off the books in return for some younger, more productive forwards, which is good. So it kind of makes the Penguins a little bit younger of a team, which is important moving forward. So from the Penguins side of the deal here, I really like it. I think they're going to have some infused youth as well as some extra production from their bottom 6, more secondary scoring. So I do like this deal from their perspective. Now, from the Florida Panthers' perspective, they did give up a fair bit with Jared McCann and Nick Bjugstad. I know Bjugstad's a player that's been mentioned off and on the last year or two for trade rumors, and Dale Talon swore he didn't want to trade him. He was a big fan of Bjugstad. But right now, the Florida Panthers, I think, have their eyes here on some bigger things that they want to accomplish, whether or not it's down at the deadline this year or if not during free agency. So this does a lot for the Florida Panthers to create a lot of flexibility with the salary cap. Now, obviously, Brassard and Sheahan, as I mentioned, are both pending UFAs, so they don't have to retain them beyond this season. Wouldn't even be shocked here if those guys are then flipped to another team before the deadline passes here on the 25th of February. They very well could end up retaining them depending on what the market is like. There is a lot of names out there in the rumor mill that could be traded. So there might be an oversaturation of players available. So it doesn't mean they're going to be traded, but I wouldn't be shocked if the Panthers do attempt to move them here and make more additional cap space this year if necessary. Now, a couple big things to keep in mind here is the Florida Panthers are one of the teams that have been rumored to be very interested in Artemi Panarin and Sergei Bobrovsky of the Columbus Blue Jackets. Now, of course, as we know, both those guys are pending UFAs with the Blue Jackets. They both seem very reluctant to sign. We saw the news the other day from Panarin's agent indicating that Artemi Panarin will not be discussing contract or his future with the Blue Jackets until the end of the season, into the summertime. So obviously, once that came out, there was even more speculation that the odds just greatly increased that they would trade him rather than just losing him for nothing. Of course, there's the whole debate whether or not they trade him and get back what they can, but try to stay competitive and obviously make some noise in the playoffs because they're having a decent season. Or do they, use them as their own rental and not make the move and see what they can do? But really, in my opinion, Columbus is not a team that's a cup contender, at least I don't think so. They're at a stage right now they're likely to make the playoffs, but they're also one short losing streak from being bumped out of a playoff spot. So it's really difficult to say what the right move is, but I do think that their likelihood of Panarin and Bobrovsky both leaving town, whether it be via trade or via free agency, is quite high. and there's been some speculation all along about both of them wanting to play in the state of Florida. So the Panthers are creating some more cap flexibility here to try to make that happen. Now, I wouldn't completely rule out a possibility they'd try to pull off a blockbuster deal to acquire them before the deadline, but of course that's really difficult to say. If not, they might be better off to wait. They might be better off to wait and talk to them via free agency and not have to give up a whole bunch of assets in order to make that happen. But of course, we did hear before that the Blue Jackets were interested in Brassard. Of course, it was unlikely that they were going to get him from Pittsburgh, being that they're a division rival. The Penguins weren't going to help the Blue Jackets get better. But now that he's off to the Panthers, even if they don't end up doing a big deal, I could see maybe Brassard being flipped over to Columbus, possibly, if they still want to go down that road from Florida. So doesn't mean those two guys that went to the Panthers are going to stay there long. Like I said, they very well could get flipped for other assets. They're not tied to them long term. This gives the Panthers a lot of cap flexibility. Right now for next season, with the two contracts they just unloaded, that it only puts them at 14 NHL contracts that they're tied to for next year for $58 million. So if we do see the salary cap increase to around 82, 83 like it's expected to, that's going to give them about $25 million in salary cap space heading into free agency. So that's certainly more than enough money for them to go after Bobrovsky and Panarin and still have money to round out their roster. So this very well could be a major transformation for the Panthers. Obviously, if they go after Bobrovsky as well, they're going to have to move a goaltender, and it's not going to be Luongo with his contract and his age and his injury status. Obviously, that's not going to happen. James Reimer would have to be the guy to go. So I'm not sure what they could work out there. So it wouldn't be a complete shocker to maybe see him maybe enter to the trade rumor mill coming up here. If not now, then over the summer. They're not going to carry Reimer, Luongo, and Bobrovsky if they were able to pull that off. So, of course, I have no way to say for sure that the Panthers are going to be able to pull this off and acquire those guys, whether it be through trade before the deadline or into free agency. But there's a lot of chatter within the NHL insiders right now indicating that this deal kind of sets them up to be better positioned to make that happen. And that's one of their big goals here. And there's a lot of interest from Florida side to make that happen. And like I said, there's been speculation for a long time that those guys wanted to play in the state of Florida. We've rehashed that multiple times before. So I guess we'll see here. Either way, for today, I like this trade for the Florida Panthers. I think they're positioning themselves well to get into free agency and kind of retool here with some potential big names. And I really like this deal for the Pittsburgh Penguins, bringing in some younger players who can kind of replace Brassard and Sheahan, hopefully increase their secondary scoring. This doesn't really change a whole lot from a salary cap perspective for the Penguins. Really, the money going out, money coming in is very comparable, but it gets some much younger players who can hopefully be more productive and make them that much stronger, not only now, but into the next couple of years here as well. So in my opinion, I think for right now, the Penguins win this trade. But if the Panthers end up being able to land Panarin and Bobrovsky because of this trade, they very well might be victorious later on once all this unfolds. So, of course, as always, I want to hear your thoughts and comments down in the comment section. What do you think of this trade? Who do you think wins the deal today? And do you think the Panthers are setting themselves up to make some bigger moves here down into short term or into free agency as we head into the summertime? If you're new to the channel, I hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams, and there's plenty of content here for all hockey fans to enjoy. So if you're new, hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up before you go. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you very much for watching, everybody. We will catch you next time.